Good afternoon. I'm Carla Verderame. I'm a professor of English at Westchester University. I am happily finishing up my 25th year, very proud of that. And today I'm proud to interview Andrea Bitner. Andrea was a student of mine years ago, so this is a thrill for me. And we're going to talk today about Andrea's experiences at Westchester, her experiences in her profession as a teacher of English language learners. I'm just going to take a few minutes to introduce Andrea. I want to show you a book that she has written, one of several, and then we'll get started. So Andrea Bitner, who lives in Philadelphia, is an educator, author, and speaker. Throughout her 22 years in public education, Andrea has worked with international students in grades K through 12. Andrea's first book, Take Me Home, was published by Austin Macaulay in July of 2021. Take Me Home is the true story of 11 of Andrea's former EL students. The book gives a firsthand account of what it's really like to become multilingual in America. Andrea is also co-author of Chip Baker's The Impact of Influence, Volume 3, and Dr. Rich Jetter's 100 No-Nonsense Things All School Leaders Should Stop Doing. In addition to teaching EL students, Andrea travels throughout the country, providing educators with successful strategies for teaching EL students and communicating with EL families. So this is Take Me Home. I've read it. It's terrific. Easy to get on Amazon. No one asked me to plug it. I'm just saying it's terrific. Okay, Andrea, let's get started. Again, I'm thrilled that you're here. This is a joy for me because you're a former student and you were wonderful then. You're wonderful now. I'm going to ask you some questions about your experience at Westchester University, your experience about your career, and we're just going to sit back and have fun. I also want to thank, I'm interrupting myself, didn't follow my notes the way I should have. I want to thank Kelsey Madison. Kelsey is a digital content specialist in the College of Arts and Humanities at Westchester University. She is the reason we're both here today, and I want to thank her for this opportunity. So Kelsey, thank you. Kelsey will be managing the chat if there are questions. Okay, now we are going to talk with Andrea. Thank you. All right, Andrea, why did you choose Westchester University?
Yes. So thank you so much for having me today. And it's awesome to be here with everybody. And yes, Westchester University. Wow. So I was a graduate of 2001. And back in 1997, when I graduated from high school, Westchester University was known as one of the premier education opportunities. You know, it was a school that people used to say, if you want to be a great teacher, you go to Westchester. And so for me, that was kind of like a no-brainer. I lived locally. I wanted to go to school. I wanted to move further away that I could return home if I needed to, or I could stay on campus. And it offered just a really great path for me to become a strong teacher.
That's terrific. It did start as a normal school. It does have that history of teacher education, and I'm so happy to hear that that was true for you. We know that your major was secondary English education. Why did you choose that major, Andrea?
I had some pretty inspiring teachers when I was in high school, English teachers, who started out by saying things to me like, Andrea, you're a pretty good writer, or, you should take this creative writing class, or, hey, you want to write for the school newspaper? And so they started to really encourage and develop my muscle in writing. And I never really thought that I was, that great at it before. So I started to kind of think, well, I love working with kids and I really seem to enjoy writing. And I always loved reading ever since I was very young. And if I meld them all together, I can be an English teacher. And that's what I started off by doing.
That's terrific. And I'm not surprised that your high school teachers saw the talent in you early on in writing and, of course, your love of reading. Describe your experience at Westchester, just in general, your experience at Westchester as a student.
Westchester was such a phenomenal experience for me. I actually started off as a student living on campus, and I was able to join lots of different clubs. I was a member of the Phi Sigma Pi National Honor Society and fraternity, co-ed fraternity. I was involved with the choir. I was involved with local clubs. I used to love to work the campus and hang out with friends. And after some time spending on campus, I was enjoying my classes as well. And some things came up at home, and I decided that I was going to become a commuter student. So I actually have had both experiences. So I continued with Westchester, and I commuted for half of my career there as well. And either way, whether it was as a commuter or living on campus, I was always felt supported. I felt respected. I felt like I could collaborate really easily with my professors. I felt like I had met people from all over the country who had come there with similar interests. So it was just a really happy time, in my life to develop myself as a young woman.
That's terrific. So there must have been quite an interesting counterpoint between the commuter and the on-campus experiences. I'm glad you had both of them. That's terrific. What would you recommend to listeners so that they make the most of their time in college? Anything in particular? Now, you've mentioned a lot of activities. You've mentioned that you met many interesting people at Westchester, that you were able to collaborate with your professors. Is there something, or maybe one or two things you'd want to have student listeners hone in on to be successful?
Yes, I think that, successful people surround themselves with successful people. And so I think it's really important when you get to college to start to develop your tribe and whatever that may look like for you. But find people who can mentor you and listen to them and do what they say. And I think that's the most important piece is do what they say. And so, finding people within your field, finding people who are classmates who may be a little bit older than you that can help you kind of see the way, finding people that can mentor you emotionally, spiritually, people that are not in your field that maybe have had hangups that have happened for them that can tell you about their mistakes and what they learned from that. But I think that just surrounding yourself with different types of people who can serve as your mentors is going to be really helpful for you because that helps you be motivated to aspire as to what you want to do next.
That is
Um,
excellent. Oh, I'm sorry.
that's fine. Go ahead. That's fine.
That's excellent advice. And then you become a mentor too.
Right. And that's the whole point, right? Is that when you can give, then, when you receive all of that great knowledge and all of that experience, then you're able to give it to the next person that might need it. The other piece I think that's really important is just being open to taking risks. And, when I started out in college and whether I was a commuter or, living on campus, I was just always open to trying something new. Am I going to be a blessed mess in the beginning? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my first year as a teacher, hot mess express, right? I remember coming home crying every day because I wasn't perfectly prepared. In my mind, I was like, I have all my tools and I'm ready to go and let's do this thing. And then what happened was, yeah, I had all the tools, but sometimes they didn't work. Or sometimes I needed a new one, right? Or sometimes they worked with one kid, but not another, So it was this trial and error. So being open to the fact that when you step into something new, whether it be college or career or whatever that may look like, you're going to have bumps in the road, but what matters is how you respond to them. How are you going to respond to them?
Excellent advice. What were some highlights? Now, we know you did talk about your experience and you did just give us some very good advice, but what were some highlights of your undergraduate experience? You can talk about maybe favorite professors, classes, your organizations, internships, projects, a memory you have, something that you haven't mentioned already that you want us to know about. That was
Yeah,
a
so
highlight for you.
There were lots. I mean, I really enjoyed like being a part of the co-ed fraternity. We did a lot of volunteer opportunities together. We had a lot of campus events together where I made some of my really good friends.
Yes.
I really enjoyed being in main hall because there were professors like yourself. I remember Dr. Mastrodi. I don't know if he's still there, but he was a phenomenal professor. One highlight from that management class, it was behavior management. I'll never forget it, was he had students in the class, college students, had prepared problematic behaviors, and we had to get up and teach, and the problematic behaviors would be going on. And after we had learned everything, it was like real life. He was evaluating how we handled them. So like different fights would break out, or different kids would be throwing something, or somebody would be whispering, like all these theories of that we learned about how to attack it came into play. And so that was one experience. I'd never been more nervous in my entire life. Then just to get up in my very first time teaching and know that things were going to be coming at me that I wasn't prepared for. So that was an awesome class as well. I remember taking Toni Morrison novel classes so I could study all of her books. And, just I think the marriage between the educational piece and the content piece for me, in addition to the management piece, filled with a lot of strong professors, is what really helped me be successful.
I'm thrilled to hear that. I'm thrilled to hear that because I've enjoyed my time at Westchester. And I like to think that, our students feel that we're preparing them well and that they're going out in the world and they're making their way well. So that's terrific. Thank you for that, Andrea. A couple more things. Well, actually, just one more thing about Westchester in particular. Did you think you'd be where you are today when you were a student at Westchester?
No, I mean, when I started out as a high school English teacher, hired over the weekend out of Westchester University to my alma mater, Chichester. And as soon as I got there, the first thing that I figured out about my students was they hated school. And I'd never experienced that before because here I was, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, obviously loved school, the school environment, being in that place with all these wonderful people. And all the kids that I had not felt successful at school. And what I learned really quickly was that they couldn't read.
Oh,
And it bothered me enough to go back to school and get a master's in reading.
good for you.
And so I went back to school again and I got a master's in reading. And that's when I started to get really curious about working with middle school students. So I moved down to the middle school level and I worked with middle school students who were Title I reading, coming in with all different needs, phonics needs, decoding needs, comprehension needs, etc. And then I started to get curious again because I started to have English language learners in my groups. And I started to love that population. And I thought, well, what is that about?
Right.
And so I went back to school again and got a cert in working with ELs. So most of my 23-year career, out of 16 of those years, has been spent as a support teacher.
I see.
And so, no, I didn't know when I started out as a high school English teacher that I would end up working with K to 12 bands throughout most of my career, and that I would become an English language learner teacher. But I find that no matter where I work, whether they are ELs or Title I kids or gifted kids or average kids or ninth graders, 12th graders, kindergartners, like it doesn't matter. For me, what I learned is that all kids are looking to feel respected, accepted, and admired. And families are too. And if you can provide that environment for those kids, they'll work for you. They will
And
always work for you.
two things I heard you say.
Sure.
School is not a safe place for everybody. And I'm glad that there are teachers out there, such as yourself, who helps that, who counters that, who helps school become a safe place. And the labels we put on students, right? The labels we put on students. The better labels are what you said: accepted, respected, and admired.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And your colleagues too. As you're working with different colleagues, as EL teachers, we move fast. We've got different grades, different kids, different proficiency levels, different classrooms, pull in, push out, co-teach, right? So we've got all these different situations. But I always find that working with colleagues as a support teacher is equally as important with those factors.
Absolutely. Good, good. Well, that's a wonderful segue into talking more about your career.
Sure.
We have some questions about your career. So thank you for answering your questions about your experience at Westchester University. Will you speak a little bit about the trajectory? You have done this some, but if you could speak a little bit about the trajectory of your career, your past positions that led to your current position. Now, you did just talk a little bit about that, but maybe
Sure. Yeah. So as I said, 16 of those 23 years have been spent as a support teacher. I've been in a couple different districts. I worked for Chichester quickly for a few years, and then I went out to Westchester Area School District, where I served as that reading specialist at Stetson Middle School. And then from there is when I moved into where I am now, which is Interborough School District, where I'm working with students in K through 12. And the trajectory has been, becoming successful at each position over time, because no one reaches success alone. First of all, you have to have this awesome team of people around you, especially in, not just in the education world, but in any world. And in addition to that, kind of taking the time to be a really good listener. And I didn't always do that at first. And so, taking that time to kind of learn the lay of the land, make small tweaks little by little, not conquering the mountain immediately, and so just kind of resetting your mind all the time to see like what's something I can do next in my career path is important. You don't have to get to step Z. First, you have to become successful at A through F, right? So just kind of keeping in mind the trajectory of your career path can be bit by bit, and it's also okay to change your mind. I started out as a high school English teacher. I loved it. Moved into reading, loved that. Moved into ELs and loved that. So you don't really know where it's going to go until you're in it.
I think that's very wise advice. And I hear you talking a lot about listening, which I love. You said that before about when you were a student, to surround yourself with people and listen to what they say. Successful people, but listen to what they say. And same thing when in your career, listening to others. And I'm sure that, and that's a wonderful model for students to listen to you. What do you like and dislike about your current professional responsibilities?
Well, I like that I get to work with many different grade levels. I love that I get to work with lots of different kids from all over the world. Some of them are born here, some of them are not. I love that I get to work with colleagues in various grade levels and various comfort levels with working with English language learners. I love that I get to mentor new teachers, which is something that's been a lot of fun for me. I had one teacher this year that's brand new to teaching. So it's been really cool to see her travel through her first year. And professional responsibilities I dislike. Well, I mean, I guess on any given day, you could find something, right, that you
Right.
dislike about your profession. I guess the pressures that educators feel sometimes
Sure.
is something that I dislike because I feel like it's causing a lot of future teachers to not want to come into our field. And what I can say about that is there is no other field that I can think of that was more rewarding than teaching. And there is no other field that I can think of where I promise you no day will ever be the same. No, that you wake up every day and it's like, what do we got? And so I think that if I had to dislike anything, it's that the teachers in your buildings that have been there like me for, many, many years are waiting for you because we need replenishment for our team. And we're excited to mentor you so that you can have success as well.
Oh, I so agree with you that every day is different. I remember I was teaching um, years ago in my hometown, and there was a business person who came in and said, I wish I had your job because every day is the same. I have a lot that's different in my job. I said, oh, I have a lot that's different in my job too. She said, but don't you just have a lesson plan and you follow it? I said, but I have 25 different personalities, in one group. So I agree that you just don't know. And it's very exciting. And now you have said this too, but do you want to hone in on what you have learned as you've grown in your profession?
Yes. I think that the first thing I've learned comes from I'm a big John Gordon fan and I read a lot of his work.
Okay.
And the first thing I ever learned from him was that no one achieves success alone.
Okay.
And I think that that's something I mentioned earlier,
You
but I
did.
think it's really important for people to remember that you can't do everything yourself, and you'll exhaust yourself trying. And so I think it's important to always be okay with any hiccup that shows up. And the difference between successful people and unsuccessful people is how you respond to it. So always be thinking, how do I want to respond to this? And have what we call your binoculars on and not your microscope thinking. And I think that's really helped me. What's my long-term vision? Where do I want to get to? And what am I willing to do to get there? As opposed to how can I just survive today? Because the students that I work with in English language learning, they need me to have binoculars on for them all the time.
That's right.
Because they're struggling day to day to conquer this really difficult language. But I can see that long term for them. And so that's what I think people need to see for themselves. I also think that it's really important for people to remember that, success is a journey and not a destination. And I know that's like kind of taboo. People say that all the time, but it really is in the journey that you learn a lot. And it really is in the journey that you achieve more than you thought. And you feel a lot of satisfaction in those small steps rather than I'm going to land here and then it's okay.
I love what you say about long-term, Andrea, because that is what we're doing for students. We're trying to help students help themselves long-term, right? And I've never forgotten my interview at not interview my when we were hired at Westchester University, we had an orientation, and there was a person who said something about being on a team, and someone in the audience said, "We have to be on a team." And the person who was giving the orientation said, "But you don't have to play every position." And I thought, oh, that I'm not going to forget, because you do try to do it all. You're young, you're new, or you're old and you're new. But if you're new, you want to, you want to impress everyone. I have to do this, I have to do that. And I never forget, you don't have to play every position. So I
I
think
will
that's what
never
you're
forget
saying.
that. I
Yeah.
love that's exactly what you're saying. Exactly. And because you have to be respectful and admire the fact that other people might play positions better than you.
Mhm.
And that's how you create a successful event is
Right.
everybody gives their strength.
Right.
Everybody gives their strength. That's awesome.
Yeah. What else do we want to ask you here? So we know that there can be trials along the way to a successful career. Can you share some struggles along the way to your success? It might include a job search, a challenge in your profession, possible self-doubt. And again, these questions have been addressed by you, but you might want to just highlight something.
Yes. I remember my very first job interview. And I was really bent on, I only want to work in this school and I'm going to get this job and I just can't wait. And I didn't get it.
Oh,
And I was devastated. And
okay.
I, tears for about a week, and it really softened my self-esteem because I thought, well, this is imposter syndrome. What am I doing? Maybe I thought I was the best. I thought I could get here right away. Everybody wants to go to this school. And it was really blowing for me to kind of find out immediately, like, no, Andrea, you've got some growing to do.
Mhm.
And so that was, what fueled me to realize that no, you've got to pick yourself up, you've got to get to the next step, and you've got to try again. And so that was one, I think, very in the beginning. And through the years, absolutely. I mean, there have been so many trials and tribulations there. I've had, students that have passed away. I've had students that, I say, like, go to bat for, right? And we're swinging and we're swinging and we're swinging and we're not seeing any success. And I had to learn that that takes time, but feeling, defeat sometimes when you lead them all the way to where you want them to go and they don't want to, and maybe they're not in the headspace in that minute to hear it, but they probably will come back later, and that's what I've learned over time when they're ready.
Right.
We've been in positions, let's talk about COVID, where I
Oh,
say, every teacher had to become a TLL, technology language learner,
oh,
in a matter of 24 hours. And that was such a trying time in our career where we were searching for kids. I couldn't find them. Our kids were gone for weeks at a time and then they pop back on and we're like, oh, hey. So, just getting them what they need technology wise, all of a sudden that learning curve, all of us had never had to teach online. So
right.
going through that years, of that experience across the whole country,
Right.
was really difficult time. Just working through the balance of work life and personal life, right? And
That's hard.
it's hard too sometimes. So I think, yeah, absolutely. Like, there's lots of trials and tribulations you'll go through as your career continues. But again, that support around you is what helps you to be able to travel through each one.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that work-life balance is very difficult. I remember starting out and grading papers until 2 a.m. and preparing lessons and it had to be done. And so I did it, but I just didn't know how to balance. And as I got older, I got better at that. But that's hard. That's very, very hard. Do you have advice for current students as they plan for their careers?
Yes. I mean, first of all, I'm really proud of you, for being in school and taking on a new opportunity and being willing to learn and grow and master different things. When it comes to your career, never be afraid to take risks. Just go put yourself out there. I always say that no, no, now that I've learned, just equals next opportunity. That's all it is. And so when you hear a no, sometimes just think to yourself, okay, next opportunity. And there are going to be great things waiting for you, but you have to put in the work.
Yeah.
You can wish for things all you want, but it's never going to just come to you. It's not just going to appear. You've got to be willing to put in the work, especially on the days when you don't feel like it.
I
And I
like
think that that's the most challenging part. Go ahead. Yeah,
I like your NO, next opportunity, because I always said to myself, okay, Carla, a door closed, a window opened. I didn't
exactly.
get published in something. I said, I'm not wasting 1 minute getting upset. I am sending this to some, it was a higher, more, it was a higher tiered academic journal than the one that said no. Good for me.
Yeah.
I love that. Next opportunity, a door closes, a window opens. Remember that.
Absolutely. And all of the practice that you're doing on the days, especially when you don't feel like it, they're just reps that are growing your muscle. And you need, everybody has to put in the reps. Everybody has to put in the reps. It's not just going to be successful immediately. It's
That's
not
right.
going to get that high level job immediately.
That's right.
So just be willing to do the work. And it will come to you.
Sometimes we look at someone, I think, and we see, oh, everything looks like it was so easy. And it wasn't. It wasn't. That person had to
So
balance something. That person had a struggle. That person had an NO told to him, her, or them.
many times.
Yeah, and that's what we have to know. So, Andrea, is there anything else that you want to say that I might have left out?
I don't think so. I'm just happy to be here. I'm proud to come from Westchester University. When you go out into the career world and you say, I attended Westchester University, people respect, accept, and admire that. And, in the education field, in the same stream, when people say I came from Westchester, or now we get student teachers from Westchester, people get excited about that because
Right.
we know that they're coming from a place of promise.
Good.
And so we look forward, to continuing to work with the school. And if I can ever help any of you out in the future, you can find me at the number 4, Andrea Bitner at gmail.com. Email me anytime, or a website, AndreaBitnerBooks.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. Get yourself on LinkedIn. That's a great connection portal for the future. And I'd be happy to help you anytime.
Andrea, do you want to tell us what's next?
I'm excited. So I'm continuing to teach daily English language learners. But in addition to that, I've been traveling to districts, universities, conferences to speak to current teachers, future teachers, former teachers, and English language learners on the topic of how to best reach, teach, and connect with your English language learners, students, and families. So it's really a blessing for me to get to still keep my hands in teaching each day and travel the country, getting to help other teachers. And that's been a really cool experience.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. That sounds wonderful. And I'm not a bit surprised. Kelsey, do we have questions in the chat?
We don't yet at this moment.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I want to thank Kelsey again for giving me this opportunity. I want to thank Andrea again for taking your time and helping us out here at Westchester. I wish you well. Thank you for being in touch with us. It's a delight for me, as I said, to see you all these years later. I'm older, but at least I get to see you all these years later and see all your successes, and we're thrilled about them.
Thank you. Have a great
Andrea.
day. Sure.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Kelsey. And thank you for joining us today.